The research ship Horizon moved slowly through space near the edge of the Xerion star system. Jake Miller stood at the big window on the observation deck, looking down at the seventh planet below. 2 moons hung in the dark sky above the world, casting strange shadows on the green jungles that covered most of the land. "I still cannot believe we are the first humans to see this place," Jake said quietly to his friend, Dr. Amy Clark. She was sitting at her computer, checking the data. That came from their sensors. Amy looked up from her screen and pushed her brown hair away from her face. "Maybe we are the first humans here, but the Galactic Council put this star system on their dangerous list over 200 years ago. There has to be a good reason for that." Suddenly, Captain Lisa Stone's voice came through the ship's speakers. "All crew members report to your stations now. We are getting an emergency message from the Council fleet." Jake and Amy looked at each other with worry, then ran quickly to the bridge. Captain Stone stood in the middle of the command area. Her face looked tense as she listened to the message coming in. A hologram showed Admiral Zexkar, a tall alien with silver skin and many eyes. "Captain Stone, you must leave the Xerion system, right now," the Admiral said, and his voice sounded very scared. "We are starting emergency lockdown procedures. Any ship that stays in this system will be marked as infected." "Admiral, we are here doing normal science work. What kind of danger are we talking about?" Captain Stone asked. The Admiral's image flickered like someone was trying to block the signal. "The Shadow Claws have woken up. I repeat, the Shadow Claws are moving around on planet Xerion 7. All ships must go to the safe distance immediately." Jake felt his heart start beating faster. He had heard stories about the Shadow Claws when he was studying alien life forms, but he always thought they were just scary tales that space travelers told each other. The story said they were super dangerous hunters that could tear through spaceship metal with just their claws. They were so deadly that whole civilizations had been destroyed by them. "Admiral, we need more details," Captain Stone said firmly. "Our mission orders do not mention any warnings about hostile creatures." "The Shadow Claws are not just hostile, Captain. They are like death itself. Every species that has met them has either run away or died. We are sending you emergency instructions now. You have 30 minutes to get to the minimum safe distance." The message ended suddenly, leaving everyone on the bridge in shocked silence. Jake watched as his crewmates' faces showed the same mix of fear and confusion that he felt in his stomach. "Captain," said Lieutenant Ben Hayes from the sensor station, "I am detecting huge energy readings from the planet's surface. Whatever is down there, it is very big and moving very fast." Captain Stone turned to face her crew. "You heard the Admiral. Everyone prepare to leave immediately. Navigation, set course for the edge of this star system." "Wait." Jake stepped forward. "Captain, this could be the most important discovery ever. We are talking about a species that the whole galaxy is afraid of. Think about what we could learn." "I am thinking about keeping my crew alive, Dr. Miller." Captain Stone's voice was strong and firm. "We follow Council rules." As the Horizon's engines started warming up to leave, Jake stayed focused on the sensor screens. The energy patterns from the planet's surface were different from anything in the databases of known alien life. They moved with purpose and intelligence. Whatever the Shadow Claws were, they were not just mindless killing machines. That night, while the ship waited at the edge of the star system, Jake could not sleep. He went to the ship's laboratory and started looking at all the information they had collected during their short time near the planet. He studied the air readings, the electromagnetic signals, and the brief glimpses of movement their sensors had recorded. Could not sleep either? Amy's voice surprised him as he worked. "Look at this." Jake pointed to the holographic display that showed the energy patterns. "These are not random movements. There is structure here, patterns that suggest they have social groups." Amy leaned over his shoulder to study the data. "Social groups? Jake, these are supposed to be the most dangerous predators in the galaxy." "According to who? Stories passed down through generations of scared space travelers? When was the last time anyone actually studied them using science?" "Probably because everyone who tried ended up dead." Jake turned to look at her. "Or maybe because everyone was too scared to try understanding them instead of just running away." The next morning, Captain Stone called Jake to her private office. The small room was crowded but comfortable, filled with souvenirs from her 20 years exploring the galaxy's frontier regions. Jake, I know what you are thinking, and the answer is no. Captain, you have not even heard what I want to propose. I do not need to. I can see it in your eyes. You want to go back, do you not? You want to study these creatures. Jake sat down across from her desk. Lisa, in all my years studying alien life, I have never found a species that the entire galaxy fears this much. What if we are wrong about them? What if fear has made us blind to the truth? Captain Stone leaned back in her chair. And what if fear has kept the galaxy alive for the past few centuries? Then we will never know, will we? We will spend forever running from something we do not understand. The captain was quiet for a long time, looking out the small window at the distant planet. The council will want our heads if they find out we stayed. The council does not have to know. Just one shuttle, small crew. Just enough to gather basic information about their behavior. Jake, Lisa, trust me on this. I have spent my whole career studying predator species. I know how to approach dangerous life forms safely. Captain Stone took a deep breath. One shuttle only. You, Amy, and Lieutenant Hayes for protection. Stay at minimum safe distance for observations only. At the first sign of trouble, you run. Jake felt excitement and terror at the same time. Thank you, Captain. You will not regret this decision. I already regret it, she replied. But there was a small smile on her face. Just promise me you will be careful. The galaxy has enough scary stories about the Shadow Claws. I do not want you to become one of those stories. 3 hours later, Jake stood in the shuttle bay watching the technicians prepare their small ship for the journey to the planet. His hands were shaking slightly as he checked his equipment one more time. Amy was running final tests on their recording devices, while Ben was studying the shuttle's weapon systems. You know, Ben said quietly. In all my years as a security officer, I have never volunteered for a mission this crazy. Crazy or brave? Jake asked. Ben smiled grimly. Sometimes there is no difference. As they climbed aboard the shuttle, Jake took one last look at the horizon. Part of him wondered if he would ever see the research ship again, but his curiosity was stronger than his fear. Somewhere on the planet below were creatures that had been judged by the entire galaxy without ever being truly understood. Today that was going to change. 3 days later, Jake found himself aboard the shuttle Pathfinder, descending through Zarian 7's thick atmosphere. Lieutenant Ben Hayes piloted the craft with steady hands, though Jake could see the tension in his shoulders. Amy sat beside Jake, nervously checking and rechecking their equipment. Atmospheric composition is breathable, Amy reported. Gravity is about 80% Earth normal. Temperature readings are within acceptable ranges. Life sign readings? Jake asked. Ben glanced at his sensors. Multiple large signatures scattered across the continent. Whatever's down there, they're not hiding. The shuttle broke through the cloud layer, revealing a landscape of incredible beauty. Massive trees stretched toward the sky like cathedral spires, their canopies forming a nearly continuous green carpet. Rivers of silver water wound between the forest giants, and in the distance, mountain peaks pierced the horizon. It's beautiful, Amy whispered. Beautiful and deadly, Ben added. I'm picking up movement patterns that suggest we're being watched. Jake leaned forward to study the sensor displays. The life signs were definitely tracking their descent, but there was something odd about their behavior. Instead of converging on the shuttle's position, the signatures seemed to be maintaining a respectful distance. Take us down near that clearing by the river, Jake instructed, but keep the engines warm. The Pathfinder settled onto solid ground with a gentle thud. Through the shuttle's reinforced windows, Jake could see the alien forest stretching in all directions. The trees were even more massive up close, some with trunks wide enough to house an entire human settlement. Sensor sweep shows multiple life forms within a kilometer radius, Ben reported. They're staying back, but they're definitely aware of us. Jake began suiting up in his environmental gear. I'm going out for preliminary observations. Like hell. You are? Amy grabbed his arm. We agreed on remote observations only. The remote sensors aren't giving us enough data. I need to see how they react to a direct presence. Jake, they could tear you apart before we even know they're moving. Amy, look at the sensor data. They've had 3 hours to attack us if that was their intention. Instead, they're keeping their distance. That suggests intelligence and restraint. Ben turned from his controls. Doc, I've got families of these things moving through the forest. Some of the signatures are smaller, probably juveniles. That's not predator pack behavior. Jake felt his excitement growing. Exactly. We're not looking at a hunting party. We're looking at social groups. Despite Amy's protests, Jake activated the shuttle's external cameras and stepped outside. The air was warm and humid, filled with the sounds of an alien jungle. Somewhere in the distance, he could hear a low rhythmic sound that might have been communication. He walked slowly toward the tree line, his hands visible and empty. Every instinct told him to run, but his scientific curiosity was stronger than his fear. Behind him, he could hear Amy and Ben monitoring his progress through the comm system. Movement at 2 o'clock. Ben's voice crackled in his earpiece. Something big coming through the trees. Jake turned to see a shadow moving between the massive trunks. As it emerged into the clearing, he found himself face to face with a creature from nightmares. The shadow claw stood nearly 3 meters tall. On its hind legs, its body covered in what looked like living darkness. Its arms ended in claws that gleamed like polished obsidian, and its eyes were pools of silver fire. When it opened its mouth, Jake could see rows of teeth designed for tearing through the toughest materials. Every human instinct screamed at Jake to run, but he forced himself to remain still. The creature approached slowly, its movements fluid and deliberate. When it was within arm's reach, it stopped and tilted its head, studying Jake with obvious intelligence. Jake, get out of there now. Amy's voice was sharp with panic, but Jake was transfixed. The creature's eyes showed curiosity, not hostility. It raised one massive clawed hand and held it out, palm forward, in what could only be interpreted as a greeting. Slowly, carefully, Jake raised his own hand and pressed his palm against the creature's. The contact lasted only a moment, but in that instant Jake felt a connection unlike anything he had ever experienced. There was intelligence behind those silver eyes, and something else. Loneliness. The creature stepped back and made a series of low, musical sounds. Then it turned and disappeared back into the forest as silently as it had appeared. Jake stood in the clearing for several minutes, his heart pounding with excitement rather than fear. When he finally returned to the shuttle, Amy and Ben were waiting with expressions of complete disbelief. You just made first contact with a shadow claw, Amy said quietly. And I'm still alive, Jake replied. That tells us everything we need to know about their true nature. Over the following days, Jake established a routine of daily contact with the creatures. He learned that they were not solitary hunters, but lived in complex social groups. The individual he had first met, whom he began to think of as the ambassador, returned each day for increasingly lengthy interactions. They're trying to communicate, Jake explained to Amy as they reviewed recordings of the encounters. Listen to the patterns in their vocalizations. There's syntax here, grammar structures. Amy studied the audio waveforms on her screen. It does look like language patterns. But Jake, these are supposed to be mindless killing machines. Supposed to be according to who? Species that never tried to understand them. Ben looked up from his monitoring station. Doc, I hate to interrupt, but we've got company. 3 Council. Ships just dropped out of hyperspace. Through the shuttle's viewports, they could see the distant specks of light that marked the approaching vessels. Jake's stomach sank as he realized their secret mission was about to be exposed. Captain Stone's hailing us, Ben reported. Lisa's voice came through the comm system, tight with barely controlled anger. Pathfinder, you are ordered to return to Horizon immediately. We have council inspectors aboard and they're asking some very pointed questions about our extended stay in this system. Jake looked out at the forest where his new friend was probably waiting for their daily meeting. Captain, we're on the verge of a breakthrough here. Just give us a few more days. Jake, the council knows we didn't leave when ordered. They're talking about court-martial proceedings. Get back here now. As the Pathfinder lifted off from the planet's surface, Jake watched the forest shrink away below them, Somewhere down there was a species that had been misjudged by the entire galaxy, condemned without trial to eternal isolation. He made a silent promise that he would return, no matter what the consequences. The truth was too important to abandon. 2 weeks later, Jake sat in a small prison cell on the Council Station Harmony. The walls were cold metal and there was nothing to look at except the blank ceiling. He thought about the trial that had taken away his job and his reputation as a scientist. The Council had been quick and harsh with their punishment. They said he broke the rules by talking to dangerous aliens, ignored safety orders, and put his crew in terrible danger. Captain Stone had tried to help him during the trial. She told the judges that Jake was only trying to learn about science, not cause trouble. But the Council was too afraid of the Shadow Claws to listen to reason. Their fear was older and stronger than any logical argument. "You have someone here to see you," the guard said as he opened Jake's cell door. Jake looked up and saw Amy standing in the hallway. Her face looked tired and worried. She was allowed to keep working as a scientist, but only under very strict watching by Council officials. Jake could see that the whole experience had been very hard on her. "How are you feeling?" she asked, sitting down on the narrow bed next to him. "I have felt better." "Do you know when they plan to let me go?" Amy shook her head sadly. "The trial. Judges are still arguing about what to do with you. But Jake, that is not why I came here today." She looked around carefully to make sure no one else could hear them, then moved closer to Jake. "I have been studying all the information we collected on planet Zerion 7. The communication sounds, the behavior we watched, everything we recorded. And what did you find?" "Jake, I think you were completely right. These are not mindless killers. The mathematical patterns in their speech show that they can think in abstract ways just like we can." Jake felt happy and frustrated at the same time. "Can you show this to the Council?" "I tried to. They would not even look at the information. As far as they care, the Shadow Claws are a closed subject that will never be discussed again. So an entire species is punished to live alone forever because of fear and hate." Amy was quiet for a moment, then reached into her jacket and pulled out a small computer tablet. "There might be another way to help them. I have been talking to some scientists from other planets who think like we do. There is a growing group of people who question the Council's rules about dangerous species." Jake took the tablet and read through the information on it. He saw names, job titles, and contact information for alien biologists, culture experts, and even some government officials from across the galaxy. "They want to help?" he asked with surprise. "They want to know the truth, and they think you might be the key to finding it." That night, Jake woke up when he heard his cell door opening. Instead of the usual guard, he saw Ben Hayes standing there, wearing regular clothes instead of his uniform. "Time to leave, Doc," Ben whispered quietly. "Ben, what are you doing here? Captain Stone sends her best wishes. She also sends you this." Ben handed Jake a small communication device and a set of civilian clothes. "There is a cargo ship leaving for the outer space regions in 20 minutes. The pilot owes the captain a big favor." Jake quickly put on the new clothes, his mind spinning with thoughts. "This is crazy. They will hunt us down like criminals." "Only if they catch us first. The ship's official destination is listed as the Kepler colonies, but the pilot has agreed to make a secret stop along the way." "At planet Zerion 7? Ben nodded, his head. "Amy is already on the ship with all the research equipment she could carry. She says if you are right about the Shadow Claws, then the galaxy needs to know the truth." The escape went very smoothly. Ben knew the station's security systems well, and a few well-placed bribes helped them avoid the guards. Within just a few hours, Jake found himself on the cargo ship Wanderer, watching the Council station become a tiny point of light behind them. The ship's captain was a tough-looking human named Pete Morris. He came to talk to Jake as they entered. "Hyperspace travel. Your friends paid me very well for this trip, but I want you to know I think you are all completely insane. The Shadow Claws have been the galaxy's nightmare monsters for hundreds of years. Maybe it is time someone asked why that is." Jake replied calmly. 5 days later, the Wanderer came out of hyperspace at the edge of the Zerion star system. "Captain." Morris agreed to wait in orbit around the system while Jake, Amy, and Ben took a shuttle down to the planet's surface. If you are not back here in 72 hours, I am leaving without you, Morris warned them seriously. I have got a wife and children to think about. Going back to planet Zirion 7 felt like coming home to Jake. He immediately noticed changes in the forest around their landing site. There were new paths cut through the thick plant growth, and the trees showed signs that someone had been taking care of them recently. The Shadow Claws had been busy during the time Jake was away. When he walked out to the familiar open area by the river, Jake was not surprised to find the ambassador waiting for him. The huge creature came toward him with movements that Jake had learned to recognize as expressions of happiness and relief. "Hello, old friend," Jake said softly with a smile. "I am sorry it took so long for me to come back here." The ambassador made a series of complex musical sounds, then pointed toward the forest with one of his massive arms. Jake followed him, with Amy and Ben walking close behind, recording everything they saw with their cameras. What they found deep in the forest challenged everything the galaxy believed about the Shadow Claws. There was a real settlement built there, with structures that had been grown from living trees and carefully tended gardens full of food plants. Young Shadow Claws played games under the watchful eyes of adult creatures. Their games showed creativity and imagination that only intelligent beings could have. "This is incredible," Amy whispered, her camera capturing every detail of what they saw. "They have art, farming, family structures just like civilized species." An old Shadow Claw approached them, moving slowly but with obvious dignity and respect. The ambassador made respectful sounds and pointed toward Jake. The elder studied Jake for a long time with wise eyes, then began to speak in a deep, musical voice. Jake turned on the translation computer that Amy had built based on their previous recordings. The machine had trouble with the complex language structure, but slowly words began to appear on the screen. "Welcome, small walker from the star paths. Long have we waited for one who would see beyond fear to truth." Jake felt tears forming in his eyes as he understood the full meaning of what was happening. These creatures were not just intelligent, they were wise and peaceful. They had been waiting for someone to give them a chance to prove they were not the monsters everyone thought they were. Over the next 2 days, Jake and his team learned about Shadow Claw society and culture. They discovered that the species had once traveled between different star systems, trying to make peaceful contact with other civilizations. But their scary appearance had caused panic wherever they went. After hundreds of years of being attacked, whenever they tried to make friends, they had given up and moved to isolated worlds like Zirion 7. The ambassador, whose real name Jake learned was HFY, had been chosen as a contact specialist. He had spent his entire life preparing for the day when someone would approach his people with open hands instead of weapons. "Your species is different from others," HFY explained through the translation system. "You seek understanding where others seek only to destroy what they fear." "Not all of my species," Jake admitted honestly. "Many humans are just as afraid as the other races in the galaxy. Fear is the shadow of ignorance," HFY replied wisely. "But ignorance can be cured with knowledge, and knowledge shared becomes wisdom." On their final night on the planet, HFY made an amazing proposal. He wanted to return with Jake to Council Space to show the galaxy that his people were not a threat to anyone. "It is too dangerous," Amy protested strongly. "They will shoot you the moment they see you." "Perhaps that is true," HFY agreed calmly. "But is not the risk of one life worth the freedom of an entire species?" Jake looked at his friend, seeing the determination and courage in those silver eyes. "If you are willing to take that risk, then I will do everything in my power to protect you. And I will make sure the galaxy hears your story," Amy added with conviction. As they prepared to leave planet Zirion 7, Jake realized that he was no longer just a scientist studying an interesting alien species. He had become a defender and spokesperson for an entire civilization that had been unfairly condemned by fear and misunderstanding. The real work was just beginning, and it would be the most important mission of his life. The journey back to Council Space took 8 long days. During this time, Jake worked day and night to prepare for what would be the most important presentation of his entire life. HFY proved to be an amazing traveling companion, showing endless curiosity about human culture and the technology that humans used. Your species builds tools to make yourselves stronger, Vexthai observed, watching Jake work on his presentation. My people grow living structures that change to serve our needs. Perhaps together we could create wonderful things that neither of us could make alone. Captain Morris still felt nervous about his unusual passenger, but Jake noticed him stealing curious looks at Vexthai whenever he thought no one was watching. The captain's fear was slowly changing into fascination, which Jake took as a very hopeful sign for what was to come. Where exactly are we taking our friend here? Morris asked as they got closer to the core worlds. New Geneva, Jake replied without looking up from his work. It is home to the Interspecies University. If we can convince the academic community first, they might help us reach the council. Amy looked up from organizing all their data and information. Jake, I have been thinking about this. Even if we can prove the Shadow Claws are peaceful, the council has hundreds of years of policy built around them being a threat. They are not going to admit they were wrong very easily. Then we do not ask them to admit they were wrong, Jake said with a smile. We give them a way to be right about something completely new. The Wanderer docked at New Geneva Station without any problems, though Jake noticed there were unusually many security guards in the spaceport. Word of their escape from council custody had apparently spread throughout the galaxy. Dr. Miller? A young woman approached them as they got off the ship. I am Dr. Sarah Kim from the university's Alien Biology Department. Dr. Clark contacted us about your arrival. Jake felt a moment of panic as he realized their secret was out, but Dr. Kim's next words made him feel better. We have prepared a secure facility for your presentation. There are representatives from 12 different species waiting to hear what you have to say. The presentation took place in the university's most secure conference room. Vexthai stayed hidden behind a privacy screen, while Jake showed the assembled scientists his recordings and data from planet Zerion 7. What you are suggesting challenges basic assumptions about how we classify predator species, Dr. Kim said when Jake finished his presentation. The implications could completely change how we approach first contact with new species. That is exactly what we are hoping for, Jake replied confidently. But there is someone who can explain this much better than I can. Jake pressed the controls for the privacy screen, revealing Vexthai to the assembled scientists. The reaction was immediate, and exactly what Jake had expected. Several delegates jumped to their feet in fear. Others reached for their emergency communication devices, and a few simply stared in complete shock. Please, Jake called out over the noise and confusion. Give him a chance to speak. Vexthai rose slowly to his full height, his presence filling the entire room. When he spoke, his translated words were soft but carried clearly to every corner of the chamber. I am Vexthai of the Shadowclaw Nation. I come not as a conqueror or destroyer, but as a representative of a people who have long been misunderstood. We are not the monsters you believe us to be. Dr. Kim was the first to find her voice after the shock. How do we know this is not some kind of trick? Your species has a reputation for being extremely dangerous. A reputation for what? Vexthai interrupted gently. For defending ourselves when we are attacked? For staying away from contact when we are met with hostility and weapons? Tell me, honored delegate, what would your people do if strangers arrived at your world with guns pointed at you and fear in their hearts? The question hung in the air, like a heavy weight. No one had an answer. Over the next hour, Vexthai answered questions from the assembled scientists with endless patience and wisdom. He explained Shadowclaw society in detail, their philosophy of living in harmony with nature, and their desperate desire for peaceful contact with other species throughout the galaxy. Why should we believe any of this? Asked Dr. Crix, a Centaurian, physicist who was known for never trusting anything easily. Because I am here, Vexthai replied in a simple but powerful way. If my people were the mindless predators you believe us to be, would I have come alone and without weapons to speak with you? Would I have trusted my life to the protection of a single human friend? The room fell completely silent as the delegates absorbed the deep meaning of that statement. Dr. Kim leaned forward in her chair. What do you want from us? Nothing, more than the chance to prove that fear has blinded the galaxy to the truth. Allow us to demonstrate our peaceful nature. Judge us by our actions, not by legends born from terror and misunderstanding. The academic conference proved to be exactly the turning point that Jake had hoped for. Within just a few days, the recordings of Vexthai's presentation were spreading through scientific networks across the entire galaxy. Public opinion began to shift dramatically as people saw that the feared Shadow Claws were not only intelligent, but remarkably wise, articulate, and peaceful. The Council's first response was exactly what Jake had expected. They issued warrants for Jake's arrest and demanded that Vexthai be turned over to them immediately for detention. But they had not counted on the growing chorus of scientific and public support for a completely new approach to interspecies relations. The Council is caught between a rock and a hard place, Amy explained as they watched news coverage from their hideout in the university's guest quarters. They cannot ignore all the evidence we have presented, but they also cannot admit they have been wrong for hundreds of years. Captain Stone arrived unexpectedly on the third day, having resigned her council commission in protest of their handling of the entire situation. "Jake, you crazy person," she said, giving him a warm hug. "You have managed to turn the entire galaxy upside down in the best possible way." "How bad is the political situation?" Jake asked with concern. "It depends on your perspective. The Council is furious and scared, but they are also losing support. 3 member worlds have formally requested that the Shadowclaw situation be completely reviewed. The Altarians are threatening to withdraw from the Council entirely if peaceful contact is not attempted." "And what about Vexthai?" Lisa smiled broadly. "He has become something of a celebrity across the galaxy. Half the galaxy wants to meet him personally, and the other half is starting to question what else they might be completely wrong about." The real breakthrough came when the University of New Geneva formally invited a delegation of Shadowclaws to participate in their annual interspecies symposium. The Council tried desperately to block the invitation, but 12 member worlds voted together to overrule them. Jake watched from the audience as Vexthai and 5 other Shadowclaws took the stage before an audience of thousands of beings from across the galaxy. The presentation they gave about their culture, their art, and their philosophy of peaceful coexistence left not a single person in the auditorium unmoved. "We do not ask for forgiveness," Vexthai concluded his remarks to the massive crowd. "We understand that fear is a natural response to the unknown, but we do ask for the chance to show you who we really are, beyond the shadows of legend and terror." The standing ovation lasted for 20 minutes and was broadcast live across the galaxy. 6 months later, Jake stood on the observation deck of the new diplomatic station in the Zarian system. He watched as ships from across the galaxy arrived for the formal signing of the Shadowclaw Accords. The agreement established full diplomatic relations between the Shadowclaw Nation and the Galactic Council, opening the door for trade, cultural exchange, and cooperation. "You did it," Amy said, joining him at the large window. "You actually changed the galaxy's mind about an entire species." Jake watched as a beautiful Shadowclaw transport ship docked with elegant grace. "I did not do it alone. It took courage from people like Lisa, determination from people like you, and wisdom from friends like Vexthai." "What is next for you?" Amy asked with curiosity. Jake smiled, thinking about the dozen other supposedly hostile species that had contacted him since the Shadowclaw revelation. There are a lot of misunderstood civilizations out there. Someone needs to give them a voice. Vexthai approached them, moving with the quiet dignity that had become his trademark throughout the galaxy. "Jake Miller, friend of the Shadowclaws, there is something very important I must tell you." "What is it, my friend?" "My people have decided to name you as our first honorary Claw Brother. It is a title we have never given to an outsider in our entire history." Jake felt tears forming in his eyes. "I am deeply honored, Vexthai. Truly honored." "The honor is entirely ours," Vexthai replied with deep emotion. "You saw past our appearance to our hearts. You proved that understanding is stronger than fear, and that courage can overcome even the deepest prejudices." As Jake watched the HFY historic ceremony unfold, with delegates from hundreds of worlds gathering to welcome the Shadow Claws into galactic society, he thought about how one act of bravery had changed everything. He had approached the galaxy's most feared predator with an open hand instead of a weapon, and in doing so had opened a door that had been closed for centuries. The galaxy would never be the same again, and Jake Miller had earned his place in history as the human who shocked the galaxy by befriending its deadliest predator. The story of Jake Miller and HFY became a legend that was passed down through generations, as a reminder that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is extend your hand in friendship to someone the whole galaxy tells you to fear.